Hello, everyone. This is an interesting headline because it's it's a contradiction in and of itself. So Trump says Russia-Ukraine agreed to immediate ceasefire talks. Kremlin offers no time frame. Well, which is it? If it's immediate, then now. And if there is no time frame, then it's not immediate. Which one is it? Which just goes to show that this is all just theater. And in addition to this being theater, once again, there's a clear indication that Trump is not in control of the situation. He is not running the show. He never was and never did. The whole thing is all about Putin, what he wants, what his plans are, and so on and so forth. And since from Ukraine's and Europe's standpoint, this whole thing means precisely nothing, they are continuing with their plans without Trump. Case in point, EU and Britain impose a new packet of sanctions. I think that is number 17 at this point. And the number 18 packet is in the works, which I completely agree with, this decision. Don't wait for the US. Pretend like it's basically not there. I think, once again, we are facing a similar situation, but for different reasons, as the US faced at the onset of World War II. At the time, the issue was the vast crowd of objectors saying this is not our war, it's happening somewhere over there in Europe. This has nothing to do with us. We're separated from it by the ocean. Why should we intervene? Then, of course, once again, because events of that magnitude don't just stay restricted to one area, the Japanese, emboldened by the successes of the Germans in Europe, decided, let's get in on this, and attacked the United States. The war came crashing onto the United States from the sky, quite literally, and then it started sinking in. And then US finally understood the far-reaching consequences of abstaining. So this is the same situation. Europe understands, UK understands, because it's right there. For them, it's up close and personal. For the US, it still hadn't sunk in, despite the fact that Russia had repeatedly considered whether they should take Alaska back. But I think for this to well and truly sink in, that's what would need to happen, because people are just not getting how this is affecting them personally. And because of the results of our last election, US has become an unreliable ally in the international arena. As we talked about before, at the center of this sanctions packet is the crackdown against Moscow's shadow fleet, about 200 vessels that use someone else's flags to transport Russian oil globally. So we talked about this. It's kind of a really underhanded way to do this. It is not legal in terms of the international law. If your country officially severs economic ties with someone, taking your country's flag, slapping it onto your ship, and then going off to Russia to get oil is not okay. So I'm glad this is being looked at. I'm glad this is being cracked down upon. that definitely hits Russia where it hurts because of its huge reliance on the oil exports. Is it going to have an effect? I doubt it. Once again, we are faced with a situation where unless something impacts Putin personally, not his country, not his people, not his army, but him personally, I don't think he's going to budge. But it is what it is. I am curious as to whether there's still conversations between France and Ukraine to deploy French troops to some of the critical cities in Ukraine to help protect them. I don't think any ceasefire will be forthcoming, not just anytime soon at all. Because again, Russia is calling the shots on that. So again, EU members may as well just move ahead with their other plans for Ukraine. Case in point, Finland. Again, how many times do we have to say? This does not just affect one country. This is not just some little territorial skirmish. So I've mentioned this in the past, and feel free to fact check me on this. Look it up. Finland has a very sordid history in Russia. Finland had lost a portion of its territory to Russia, Karelia, which still continues to be in Russian possession. I don't think at this point Finland wants it back because over the decades of Russian governance, it had turned into a complete dump. However, they also understand that 800 border with Russia is a very long line of exposure. So they're not waiting, and they're starting to take preliminary measures to secure that part of their border. Now, they're talking about contingencies for the end of the war in Ukraine. We don't know when the war in Ukraine might conclude. I would say don't wait, because you never know when it might occur to Putin. Heck, you know what? Why don't I carry out military actions on 2 fronts instead of 1? And if and when the war in Ukraine does conclude, again, it wouldn't surprise anyone if Russia began redeploying troops along the borders of other states that it wants to bring back into the fold, so to speak. The border has been closed officially due to both Russia's covert operations and due to Russia sending migrants into Finland by way of sabotage. So no surprise there. And again, this is just one facet of Russia's ongoing attempt to destabilize Europe, to compromise Europe in terms of security, in terms of national security, in terms of economy, and in terms of politics. Right now, the good news is that multiple countries are showing some resistance based on the election results there. Romania is the most recent one. So, once again, more to come on that. This story is in Reuters, and it is a cautionary tale to the United States. Russia's investigative committee has launched a criminal proceeding against a prominent journalist who provides critical coverage of the war in Ukraine. Does that sound familiar to you, Americans? That covering a political global event in the light that is negative to a particular party is a crime. You think on that. More to come.